world, Greta. We talked early on, right? Greta is all about what? The waters are rising, climate's getting hot. Or Malala is talking about women's education and the consequences when the country does not respect girls' education. So, and Malala, by the way, got married, and but we're kind of just pulling together that really education and the sciences are really very important. So, and over here we have just a commemoration here of the Asian impact on the community here. Let's go back here. Now, what's this thing in the middle? This is an idea that I had one day, and I mentioned it to Dr. Collier. I wish we could have a history train here that stops every 20 years, and then we can see what's happening from 1800 forward. And she had a roommate who passed away since then, who was an engineer. And she built this thing at our house, in our front yard. The wiring behind this thing is really complex. You don't see it. Because I also wanted then a video on each station, right? And I wanted to control on, up, and so on. So we started 1800, Lewis and Clark are arriving, the invention of the steam engine, the steam engine, steamboat, and of course Lewis and Clark arrived. So we have a few objects that sort of complement 1800. We only dwell here on exploration, science, technology, social development, and music and the arts. And so you can pick up each station there has this video that you can watch what has happened in 1800. And you can go back and, just don't break things. We're not a museum with no touchy-touchy. This is a hands-on thing, right? But then we get here now to Darwin, the invention of photography, and Queen Victoria. Already back here, we're now talking 20s, 40s, right? She released or began to introduce the idea of releasing slaves. Now we know there are more slaves today than there ever were in history. So to think that slavery has been abolished is just sort of a misconception. But it's maybe an interpretation what their ideas of slavery is, right? Well, we need to be really thoughtful about that. And that's a conversation that we dwell on a lot in this museum, a topic of race, right? So now we're going into what we call the Oregon Trail. That means we're beginning to establish the state of Washington and its boundary. This is an old original map where they then began to examine and then finally drew the line, in Canada. But here we have now 1840s, and this is our first communication tool. Then at that time, it's a telegram. And that first telegram, it says what God has wrought. And it's very interesting. Another day we can talk a little bit more about that. But this is really where we are beginning to work with our various reservations, explorations, and beginning to establish Washington State, right? Okay, 1860s now. Yeah, come here. I promise you it'll go like this. Okay, there you go. This is cool. This is so much fun. So that's your speaker. Not electric, right? No electricity, we just crank it, right? Now, earlier on, the girls would be dancing to this, right? We cranked it up and we played it in a beautiful way to dance. So we went from one cylinder to another. And instead of cranking it up like this, we now crank it up like that. And so they were able to record speech now. Music, and a lot of it was very patriotic speeches. And we have a whole bunch of them over here, because now we are in the 1860s. Here you have Lincoln, Civil War, right, signing the Emancipation Proclamation. We have Edison invent electricity. We have Alexander Graham Bell inventing the telephone that we have a copy over there. And Remington